Slavery didn't start with humans. At 4 a.m., a colony of ants launches an attack on their neighbors. Not for food, not for territory. They're looking for something specific, the eggs and larvae of another species. They find them, grab them, and carry them home. When those larvae hatch, they will spend their entire lives working for the colony that stole them. Cleaning tunnels, feeding young, defending a home that was never theirs. They will never know they were taken. Scientists call these ants slave makers. That's not a metaphor, that's the clinical term used in peer-reviewed research. And there are 50 species that do it, which means the question isn't whether animals can have slaves. The question is what it tells us that they've been doing it so much longer than we have. Let's look at exactly how this works. The ants doing this are called polyergus, sometimes known as Amazon ants. Their targets are Formica, larger ants that would win a fair fight. So polyergus scouts find a Formica nest, return home, and recruit. The raid assembles at dawn, hundreds of workers moving in a column. When they arrive, they release a chemical. Entomologists call it a propaganda pheromone, that's the actual term, which causes the defending Formica workers to panic and scatter instead of fight. The polyergus pour in, they find the brood chamber, they grab as many eggs and larvae as they can carry and leave. The whole operation takes about 30 minutes. Back at the polyergus nest, the stolen larvae hatch and immediately begin doing what Formica workers do. Cleaning, foraging, nursing, building for the polyergus for their entire lives. Now here's the part that should make you stop. The polyergus themselves have become so dependent on this system that they can no longer function without it. They can't build. They can't nurse their own young. Some polyergus colonies, if deprived of their Formica workers, will starve to death surrounded by food they can't process. The slave maker has enslaved itself in the process. The system that gave them an advantage eventually removed their ability to survive without it. The exploitation became the dependency, which is, if you think about it, not entirely unlike what happens to economies built on forced labor. The people running the system eventually can't imagine functioning without it. Ants are weird, you might say. This doesn't say anything beyond ants. Fair, let's look at birds. The cuckoo lays its eggs in another bird's nest, leaves. The host parents raise the cuckoo chick as their own. The chick hatches early, pushes the host's eggs out of the nest, and receives all the food and care intended for a family that no longer exists. The host parents keep feeding it, even as it grows larger than they are. Even as it looks nothing like them, they cannot stop. The cuckoo chick's begging call is tuned to trigger the parental feeding response at a frequency the host species cannot resist. Exploitation of a biological mechanism. The cowbird does something similar across North America. Over 220 host species affected. Many have never evolved defenses because the cowbird only arrived in their habitat recently. The exploitation is so new, the victims haven't had time to adapt. What does it mean that these behaviors exist? What does it say about us that the structural blueprint for slavery, capture, forced labor, dependency, exploitation appears independently across dozens of species across hundreds of millions of years? Evolution doesn't have ethics. It selects for survival, not for justice. Evolution selected for the capacity, the tendency to exploit available resources, including other beings, when the calculation made it advantageous. What humans developed that ants did not is the capacity to examine that tendency, to name it, to decide whether to act on it. The ant cannot question the raid. It has no mechanism for stepping back from the chemical signal and asking whether this is the right thing to do. We can. That capacity is the difference. There's one more thing worth knowing. Some Formica colonies have started fighting back. Not escaping, not organizing. Just quietly, individually, with no coordination. Some Formica workers raised in polyergus colonies have been observed neglecting polyergus larvae, failing to provide care. Researchers call it slave rebellion, the actual term in the literature, and it works. Colonies where this happens produce fewer polyergus workers. The raiding capacity declines. The system weakens from the inside. They didn't plan it. They don't appear to understand what they're doing, but they do it anyway. Which means even in a system designed to prevent resistance in a species with no language, no ideology, no concept of rights, the refusal still emerges. Maybe the capacity for refusal is older and more fundamental than we thought. Maybe it's not something humans invented. Slavery didn't start with humans, but the decision to end it did. Subscribe, hit the like button. More coming.